Hey everyone, today we're going to examine the idea of a Melchizedek priesthood that Messianics had bestowed upon their New Testament Messiah. Let's find out if this lines up with the Tanakh and the Word of Elohim. Shalom everybody, and welcome to Beit Tefillah. Today I want to talk about this whole Melchizedek priesthood thing that Messianics think was bestowed upon their New Testament Messiah. Now they get this faulty doctrine from reading verses such as Hebrews 6:20, which states, Yeshua has entered as a forerunner for us, having become high priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. What's interesting is even though Melchizedek is found 9 times in the New Testament, it is found only in the fake book of Hebrews, and 6 out of those 9 times it's found in chapter 7. Nobody is certain who wrote the book of Hebrews. It could be the writer of Luke. At first it was attributed to Paul, but most Bible scholars feel that it wasn't Paul who wrote it. But don't we find it more than a little odd that if there was truly some type of Melchizedek priesthood, that it would have been mentioned in some other book of the New Testament? Maybe in one of the gospel accounts or something? But it's found no place else in the New Testament but this book of Hebrews. And Strong's Concordance doesn't even give a definition of Melchizedek as being any kind of priest or priesthood. It merely defines it as a patriarch. The book of Hebrews also states this, is recorded in Hebrews 4:14-15. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Yeshua, the Son of Elohim, let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who was tried in all respects as we are, apart from sin. So Yeshua is supposed to be the high priest now? Okay. What did Elohim say? Deuteronomy 18, verse 1 and verse 5. The priests, the Levites, all the tribe of Levi have no part nor inheritance with Yisrael. They are to eat the offerings of Yehovah made by fire and his inheritance. For Yehovah your Elohim has chosen him out of all your tribes to stand and serve in the name of Yehovah, him and his sons forever. Wasn't this Yeshua guy supposed to be Jewish? Didn't they tack a sign over his head when he was supposedly nailed to a tree that called him the King of the Jews? And don't most Messianics believe in this virgin birth stuff? So if the Holy Spirit impregnated Miriam, does that mean that Elohim was Jewish? Oh, wait a minute, they give the genealogy for Joseph. Joseph was Jewish. That's right. The Torah states in Numbers 1:2, take a census of all the congregation of the children of Yisrael, by their clans, by their fathers' houses, according to the number of names, every male head by head. And later on in that same chapter, Numbers 1:18, and they assembled all the congregation together on the first day of the 2nd month, and they declared their ancestry by their clans, by their fathers' houses, according to the number of names, from 20 years old and above, each one head by head. So the Torah clearly states that the birthright is passed down. The genealogy comes from the fathers, right? And we know Elohim is not a man. He's not a Levite, nor is he a Jew, if you believe that virgin birth stuff. And Joseph was supposedly Jewish. So that means that Yeshua was not part of the tribe of Levi. So according to Elohim's own rules in the Torah, Yeshua could not have been part of the priesthood in any way, let alone some kind of high priest. A while ago I was listening to a video done by a Hebrew roots teacher, and in this video he was trying to rationalize and justify this Yeshua guy being both king and high priest, and of course he was terribly confused. He stated something to the effect of, well, Yeshua being Jewish, he couldn't be a Levitical priest, so this is why he was a priest in the order of Melchizedek. You know, this silly doctrine keeps being taught by Hebrew roots teachers that claim to be Torah keepers. But once again, if these teachers actually knew what the Torah and the Tanakh stated, they'd have to stop teaching this foolishness. We know that we have to prove all things out according to the Old Testament or the Tanakh, right? So we need to go there and look for the name or the term Melchizedek. It's found only twice in the Tanakh, and it's a combination of two Hebrew words, Melech, which means a king or royal, and the Hebrew Zedek, which can mean right, prosperous, or righteous. Melchizedek does not translate to king of righteousness. It's simply a title that means righteous king. It has nothing whatsoever to do with some kind of New Testament Messiah or some kind of priesthood that replaced the Levitical priesthood. Not at all. Let's go ahead and read those two verses that mention this title Melchizedek in the Tanakh. First one is from Genesis 14:18. And Melchizedek, sovereign of Shalem, brought out bread and wine. Now he was the priest of the Most High El. This verse was speaking of an event that happened right after Abraham and his men rescued his nephew Lot that was taken and held captive by a bunch of wicked kings. Also, if you're reading in Tanakh, this event occurred before Abraham had any children. If we remember, Abraham's great-grandson was named Levi, and the Levitical priesthood descended from him, right? So this event mentioned in Genesis chapter 14 took place hundreds of years before Elohim set up the Levitical priesthood. In reading the Tanakh, we can see that many men of Elohim, for example, Abel and Noah and Abraham, they all performed their own sacrifices, correct? They didn't have a priesthood do it for them. And obviously there was no Levitical priesthood during all of that history. The righteous men of Elohim performed their sacrifices and offerings according to Elohim on their own. And this opportunity was taken away from the people after the grievous sin of the golden calf on Mount Sinai. Then the Levitical priesthood was ordained to do all of this by Elohim. So let's read that verse again, Genesis 14:18. And Melchizedek, sovereign of Shalem, brought out bread and wine. Now he was the priest of the Most High El. Well, Shalem is an early name of Jerusalem, and we know that sovereign means king. And as I'm going to talk about in a minute, we'll see that he was a ruler for the Most High El, but not a priest, as in a priest or whatever people think when they hear the word priest. It's not what he was. The Melchizedek mentioned here was a righteous king of early Jerusalem. That's it. And the second and the last verse in the Tanakh that mentions the title of Melchizedek is this next verse in Psalm 110:4. Yahweh has sworn and does not relent. You are a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. And this verse I want to discuss in a little more detail. Now the Hebrew word for priest is Kohen, and the plural for that is Kohanim. Kohen can also mean leader, ruler, or one that holds an office. There is a different Hebrew word for priesthood as being in service to Elohim, which is the Hebrew word kahuna. That word is found 14 times in the Tanakh, and this word always refers to the Levitical priesthood. Neither time that the title Melchizedek is mentioned in the Tanakh does it ever refer to a priesthood. And there's another point that I want to go into deeper. I've discussed this in a previous video, but whenever we see the word priest or priest in the Tanakh, it doesn't always refer to a Levitical priest or even a priest that serves Elohim. For example, Genesis 41:50. And to Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of scarcity of food came, or the famine, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore to him. Now renamed Heliopolis by the Greeks, On was a city in ancient Egypt. Potipharah was a ruler, which was translated to priest in English, of that city. The city of On was a center for sun god worship in ancient Egypt. Okay. Let's read another example in Exodus 3:1. And Moses was shepherding the flock of Yithro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. So this verse records Moses' father-in-law being a priest or a Kohen before any sort of Levitical priesthood was set up by Elohim. Let's also read 2 Kings 11:18. And all the people of the land went to the house of Baal and broke it down. They completely broke up its altars and images and slew Matan, the priest of Baal, before the altars. So Matan was a priest of Baal. That word priest also comes from the Hebrew word Kohen. There's a different translation of that word in 2 Samuel 8:18, which reads, And Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was over both the Kerethites and the Pelethites, and David's sons were chief rulers. The end of that verse that was translated to chief rulers also comes from the Hebrew Kohanim, plural of priests, right? And the translators got this right because they knew the fact that David was from the tribe of Yehudah and that his sons couldn't be part of the actual priesthood, but they were chief rulers under their father, King David. 3 verses earlier, this is written in 2 Samuel 8:15. And David reigned over all Yisrael, and David was doing right ruling and righteousness to all his people. So what was David? He was a righteous king. And the author of Psalms chapter 110 wrote this psalm regarding King David. Psalm 110:4. Yehovah has sworn and does not relent. You are a priest or a ruler forever according to the order of Melchizedek. Now David wasn't a Levite. He was a Jew and a righteous king. Melchizedek. Now I know there's going to be some people that are going to hear that verse, or they're going to read it in their own scriptures, and they're going to run with that word forever, thinking it means forever and ever. But let's look into that. The word forever comes from the Hebrew word olam, which doesn't always mean forever and ever and ever. It can also mean to a vanishing point, to the end of a cycle, or it can even mean old. A couple examples of that. First one in Exodus 21:5-6. And if the servant truly says, I love my master, my wife and my children, let me not go out free, then his master shall bring him before Elohim and shall bring him to the door or the doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. The word forever there is also from the Hebrew olam. The servant with the pierced ear was to serve his master forever. So are these servants with pierced ears from a couple thousand years ago still running around serving their masters? No, they died off. Or they met their vanishing point. Okay, olam. Another example in Deuteronomy 32:7. Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. That word old there was also translated from the Hebrew olam. So there's clearly a few different meanings to the Hebrew word olam. Hopefully that clears up any confusion with the word forever in Psalm 110 verse 4. So that's the only 2 verses in Tanakh that mention Melchizedek, and clearly we can see they had nothing to do with some sort of priesthood like the Levitical one. And just like that, poof, goes the little erroneous doctrine that the Messianics have about the Melchizedek priesthood. You know, nobody would even be talking about some kind of nonsense called the Melchizedek priesthood if it wasn't for the phony book of Hebrews. Let's hear again. Deuteronomy 18, verse 1 and verse 5. The priests, the Levites, all the tribe of Levi have no part nor inheritance with Yisrael. They are to eat the offerings of Yehovah made by fire and his inheritance. For Yehovah your Elohim has chosen him out of all your tribes to stand to serve in the name of Yehovah, him and his sons forever. Let's also read Exodus 40:12-15. And you shall bring Aharon and his sons to the door of the tent of meeting and wash them with water. And you shall put the set-apart garments on Aharon and anoint him and set him apart to serve as priest to me. And you shall bring his sons and put long shirts on them and shall anoint them as you anointed their father, and they shall serve as priests to me. And their anointing shall be for them an everlasting priesthood throughout their generations. It's also here in Numbers 25:11-13. Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aharon the priest, has turned back my wrath from the children of Yisrael, because he was ardent with my ardor in their midst, so that I did not consume the children of Yisrael in my ardor. Therefore say, see, I am giving him a covenant of peace, and it shall be to him and to his seed after him a covenant of an everlasting priesthood, because he was ardent for his Elohim and made atonement for the children of Yisrael. Now we know that Eleazar says son of Aharon the priest. So Phinehas was the grandson of Aharon, so was still in Aharon's line. But the priest kind of went wayward a little bit, and remember the sin of the woman coming in the camp and the 2 running off into the tent, and so Phinehas had to go run them through with a spear, because the priests weren't doing what they were supposed to do. He did, and so he reestablished that covenant. Okay? And Elohim told Jeremiah that his covenant with David and his covenant with the tribe of Levi would continue as long as day follows night and night follows day, as we can read in Jeremiah 33:18-21. And for the priests, the Levites, there is not to cease a man to offer burnt offerings before me, to kindle grain offerings, and to slaughter continually. And the word of Yehovah came to Jeremiah, saying, Thus said Yehovah, if you could break my covenant with the day and my covenant with the night, so that there be not day and night in their season, then my covenant could also be broken with David my servant, so that he shall not have a son to reign upon his throne, and with the Levites, the priests, my attendants. So, where in the Tanakh did Elohim change his priesthood from the Levitical one that was to last forever to some kind of Melchizedek priesthood? Where did Elohim change that? Where did he state that? Nowhere. So what's going on? Well, a great lack of understanding, for one. As we just read, there's only 2 verses in the entire Tanakh that mention this title of Melchizedek, and nowhere with those verses or any place else in the Tanakh did Elohim ever change his mind and go against his covenant with the Levites to set up a brand spanking new Melchizedek priesthood to serve him instead of the Levitical one. That's just nonsense. You know, and isn't this what it always boils down to? There's always some doctrine of man that has to be examined to see if it matches the Tanakh and the word of Elohim or not. And if the answer is no, then what do we do with these matters? We simply disregard them as faulty doctrines of men, like this Melchizedek priesthood. My point today is, even though the Torah is very clear that Elohim established the priesthood to be through Aharon and his sons forever, this everlasting appointment is totally disregarded by today's believers in some kind of Melchizedek Messiah. You know, how can some people have no problem accepting the eternal covenant with Judah and Yisrael, but then completely disregard the eternal covenant with Aharon and the tribe of Levi when they justify some kind of Melchizedek priesthood? Do they think that Elohim backs out of his covenants or promises? See how easy some people are going to throw away the word and promises of Elohim in order to justify their New Testament idol? And it amazes me that more people in the Hebrew roots community do not see this. They, just as churchianity, hold up their New Testament Savior over Elohim. Most would deny that, but it's true. We should think about something for a minute. Many of us either have or grew up with a red letter Bible where the words of Jesus in the New Testament were bolded in red. My question is, why aren't the words of Elohim in the Torah bolded even greater? See what I mean? Think about it. Whose word do you follow? Whose word is more important to you? Elohim's word in his Torah, or some kind of phony book of Hebrews? Well, I hope this video blessed you. Thanks for watching, everybody, and being a part of Beit Tefillah. Please sub to our channel if you haven't done so yet. Please also share this video. There's a couple of large ministries in the whole Hebrew roots community that are based around this faulty Melchizedek doctrine. People need to know the truth about this. Okay? So shalom to all of my brothers and sisters who are Yisrael and are scattered worldwide in the dispersion. Everybody be blessed and have a wonderful day.